What is going on, Raider Nation? It's your boy Sanji back at it with another video. Today we are going to talk Raiders. We're going to get into a ton, man. Um, Free agency week one is officially in the books, and the Raiders, we had an up and down week, man. But and I shouldn't say that. It started off kind of down, and then from there we really took off. Dave Ziegler, Josh McDaniels really did a fantastic job. And I'm excited, man. And we're going to discuss the free agency. But more than that, we're going to talk a little bit more about things like Derek Carr and his contract extension. Matthew Stafford just got his extension. So we'll talk about Derek Carr and his extension. We'll talk about the Stephon Gilmore situation, as well as some players that the Raiders have recently brought in. I'm excited, man. And I appreciate all you guys that are already here. If you guys could just hit that thumbs up button, I would really, really, really appreciate it. I really hope you guys are enjoying your Saturday night, man. It's a Saturday night, and you guys are here watching this live stream with your boy. So I appreciate it, man. Big shout out to you, kicking ass. Shout out to you, Adrian, Anthony, William, Ty Davis, Freaky Raider. Shout out to all of you guys, man. William said Carr had a hand in orchestrating the Adams trade. Because of that, I will cease to use his first name if he does not take a team-friendly deal. We still need to build the defense with free agents, defensive tackles, and linebackers. You know what's interesting is I believe it was Kondo Harpender who said something to the tune of Derek Carr would take a cheap contract if Devontae Adams is brought in. But if Devontae Adams isn't brought in, then he isn't taking a cheap contract. So we brought in Devontae Adams. So do you guys think he's going to take a cheap contract? And we're going to discuss that. We're going to get into that plus a bunch more. Big shout out to all of you guys, man. Big shout out to you, NorCal Raider Jesse. Is a member on this channel. You guys can see by the member icon right next to his name. If you guys aren't members to the channel, man, join, subscribe. It really supports this channel, and I really appreciate it. Austin Tate said, I'd like to see us sign an offense tackle and depth on the O-line and D-line. Also, maybe Bobby Wagner and Stephon Gilmore. Believe it or not, the Raiders actually signed an offense tackle today. It hasn't been announced yet, but Brian Parker has been signed by the Las Vegas Raiders. And we'll get into that a little bit later on, and we'll really discuss it. We'll discuss his contract a little bit and kind of what it means for the Raiders, man. You know, the Raiders were interested in a different offense tackle that ended up going to a different team. We're going to talk about all that plus more. Big shout out to all you guys, man. Let's just jump onto this, right? TD Nick is asking a question. News on Gilmore. And that's what I want to talk about. You know, yesterday it was reported that the Raiders offered a contract to Stephon Gilmore. Officially, they offered a contract to him. And they kind of put it in his ballpark. The Athletic, as well as, and I forget who it was for the Athletic, someone reported that the Raiders are not actually really even interested in Stephon Gilmore. That it's basically just rumors and stuff like that. And that's what the Athletic was reporting on one end. And then you have some other national writers saying things on another end, right? Guys are saying that the Raiders are indeed interested in Stephon Gilmore. So it's kind of all over the place, right? From what I have heard, the Raiders are interested in Stephon Gilmore. They have spoken to Gilmore. So I'm not 100% sure where the Athletic is getting their information from. Again, you know, the Athletic doesn't have any more inside information than the next person, right? It's not like the Athletic and whoever, you know, the person is reporting from there specifically. It doesn't mean that they have any more inside information, right? Like if someone knows Stephon Gilmore personally, if there's a beat writer that knows Gilmore and has spoken to Gilmore, and Gilmore has told that person, then that would be the most trustworthy news, right? And from what I've heard, the Raiders are interested. I've heard that the Raiders have spoken to him. Now, I didn't necessarily hear that the Raiders actually made an offer to Stephon Gilmore, but I have heard that they were contract discussions. So that is the last that I've heard, man. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see if the Raiders actually do bring in Stephon Gilmore. I think there's a good chance that they do. Now, from what I'm hearing, there are a couple of different teams that are interested in Gilmore. It's not just the Raiders. There's definitely a couple other teams. And we'll find out, right? We'll find out real soon who ends up getting Gilmore. Now, I will say this. The Raiders, if you guys think about it, right? If the Raiders could bring in Stephon Gilmore or a caliber of the type of player he is, I think it impacts his team tremendously. Now, I understand we got Anthony Abritt, and we'll talk about him as well as Rocky Sin. We traded for Rocky Sin, traded Unique Ngakwe for him. And I truly believe that those two guys are really solid pickups, but Gilmore it's completely different when you bring in a guy like Gilmore. Gilmore 2 years ago was the league's best cornerback. Like 99% of people would have said Stephon Gilmore was the best cornerback in the league. Maybe not so as much today, but he's still a really good football player. And again, I know he's getting up there in age, and as a corner, age doesn't go well with the corner. Um, but I still think that if the Raiders could bring in a guy like Gilmore, it takes us to the next level. Obviously, if we do bring in Gilmore, a lot could be said about what this current regime thinks about the secondary players that the last regime brought in. We let Keyshawn Nixon walk. Trayvon Mullen, don't really know what he's going to end up like. Amik Robertson, really don't know what type of player he'll be. Honestly, I feel like the only player in the secondary that this past regime likes is probably Nate Hobbs, and that's because he's just a good football player, right? So we'll obviously see what ends up happening. I see a lot of you guys' comments talking about Gilmore. Again, it's coming, man. We're going to get the news real soon. Some people are asking if I am baked. I definitely am not baked. I'm as sober as it gets. I literally just had a cup of coffee a couple hours ago. So I feel good, man. I'm excited. And I appreciate all the comments. I see a lot of other comments. Some people are saying this one, TD Slee says Kyle Van Noy is going to be a Raider, I think. Maybe I could see that definitely happening, right? The Patrick Graham defense is going to utilize all these different types of players. Patrick Graham wants his defense ends to be able to drop back in coverage, right? And not always, right? But occasionally you're going to want to bring 2 extra blitzes from the right. You're going to want that left defensive end to drop back, and that's the type of player Kyle Van Noy is, right? He can pass rush, he can drop back, he can play in that stack position a couple of plays and then also blitz. Those are the types of players that I think Patrick Graham's going to want. I see a lot of you guys' questions about Brandon Parker, and we're going to get into that in just a second. This one, L Raider left the first super chat of the day. Big shout out to you, man. As you guys know, super chats help this channel a lot, so big shout out to you guys. You said, I can see that Carr agreed to a cheaper contract to afford Adams and maybe other good players. Either you can take a lower pay to afford weapons or pull an A-Rod and have nobody. What do you think? And you're spot on. I talked to our Raider Scout about this. We actually made a video about this topic specifically. We talked about Derek Carr's contract. I never posted the video. I still have it. Maybe I'll post it in the next couple of days. But we talked about this exact thing, right? Aaron Rodgers had pretty solid weapons, right? You have Devontae Adams. You have, I forget the other receivers there as well. You have 2 other really good receivers. You have a good tight end. And the thing is Aaron Rodgers decided he wanted to take a huge contract, right? One of the biggest contracts we've ever seen a quarterback get. And when you do that, what happens is you lose out on playmakers. The NFL salary cap is a hard cap. You don't have a ton of money to just spend wherever you want to spend it. And the fact that Derek Carr is only going to be paid $19 million this upcoming year does give the Raiders a lot of room to make things happen. Devontae Adams, right? Colton Miller was extended last year. Andre James was extended last year. Josh Jacobs might need an extension. Hunter Renfrow, Darren Waller might need an extension, right? And none of those things happened without Derek Carr. So me personally, I appreciate the fact that Derek Carr has allowed us to do that. Also, we'll see how his next contract is. Matthew Stafford just got paid, I believe, $43 million per year. I think he got a 3-year extension. I forget the exact number on the top of my head. I think it's $129 million or something like that. Roughly $43 million per year. Derek Carr can get something very close to that. All right. Anywhere from 35 to 45, Derek Carr can get. Right. And the thing is Derek Carr could also probably say, hey, I want $48 million. And there are teams that will probably pay that to Derek Carr, right? Because at the end of the day, he's still a good quarterback. And you look at a guy like Kirk Cousins, who's nowhere near the talent level of Derek Carr, get paid the type of money he gets paid. Derek Carr could get something very close as well. Now, as El Raider says, you can either have great weapons and take a cheaper contract, or you can take as much money as you want and not have great weapons. And I know people love to use Patrick Mahomes as an example, saying, well, how did they do it? They just downgraded safeties. Tyrann Mathieu is gone. He will no longer be with the Chiefs. And they went out and signed a different safety. They downgraded safeties because of that. Orlando Brown Jr., they gave up, I believe, two picks to bring him in. They franchise tagged him because they can't afford to extend him long term. Patrick Mahomes getting money actually impacted the Chiefs in a negative way, and we're going to see it more and more as the seasons kind of go on. Now, one of the things teams are kind of doing, again, I really appreciate the comment. One of the things that teams are doing now is they're adding void years, more so than we've ever seen before. Like, teams are adding so many void years, and what void years do is you basically cheapen the contract. You basically cheapen the cap hit in the current year, and you take that into years where the player won't be on the roster. The Raiders, I believe, did the void year. I believe with Devontae Adams. I think his after his last year, the 5th year, I think there's a 6th year to his extension, which is a void year, which is very interesting. Big shout out to Ty Davis for becoming a member to the channel. If you guys could become members, man, I appreciate it, man. I really appreciate it. Big shout out to you, Ty. It makes your guys' comments much more visible as well. So big shout out to you, Ty. I really appreciate you becoming a member. Mr. Nate Duncan said, keep pumping out these videos, bro. What's our salary cap? Where's our salary cap at? I saw a number of roughly $15 to $17 million is what the Raiders have in cap space right now. And I believe we add another $25 million post June 1st. So, or I should on June 1st specifically. So, we're looking at over $30 million when June 1st comes around. But keep in mind, we can't technically use some of that cap. Although we could agree to a contract with the player and, not sign it today and sign it in the future. So technically there's a lot of wiggle space, but I think we're still close to $40 million in cap space after our cuts. Now, obviously, we have a ton of dead cap this year from the 3 big cuts that the Raiders did do. I'm going to have to figure out the cap space. I think I may do a full-on video just breaking it down, figuring it out, because I don't think spot tracking over the cap are updated. I don't think they take into consideration some of the things that have been done but not officially announced, if that makes sense. Douglas said Super Bowl maybe. What's our chances? I think the Raiders are Super Bowl bound, man. What do you guys think? And by Super Bowl bound, I mean we're going to compete for a Super Bowl. I think the Raiders will absolutely compete. I actually just saw something that earlier the Raiders also signed another offensive lineman, right? Brandon Parker was re-signed, and we're going to get into that in just a little bit. Alex Bars, his contract numbers are officially out there as well. Guard that we signed 1 year, $1.7 million. So we'll talk about that as well in just a second. I think the Raiders are Super Bowl bound, and I see some of your guys' comments. So, again, I think the Raiders are a good team, and you bring in a guy like Devontae Adams and Chandler Jones, and we're going to talk about those guys a little bit later on. But when you bring those type of players in, those type of playmakers, there's no way you're not Super Bowl bound, right? There's no way you're not going to have success. Big shout out to you, Douglas. I really, really, really appreciate the super chat. Big Z said, "Do you think Deshaun Jackson will be a perfect wide receiver too in a cheap signing?" I don't think so, to be honest. Deshaun Jackson was a signing of the last regime, not so much of this regime, right? Like same with Casey Hayward, right? He goes to the Falcons. Brandon Facyson goes to the Colts. We trade away Yannick Ngakoue. These guys are the past regime's players, and I feel like Deshaun Jackson was more so of a past year's player, right? I don't think he's going to be a guy for the Raiders going forward. But what do you guys think? Do you guys think Deshaun Jackson could be a guy for the Raiders? I don't know. I really don't know how I feel about that, but I do think there's a chance that they do bring him back, but he is, I think, 34, 35 years old. So it is kind of a tough signing, in my opinion, at least. I do appreciate the super chat, man. I really do. The Raiders also signed a backup quarterback. And we're going to get into the Derek Carr extension talks, as well as the fact that we bring in Garrett Gilbert. When the Raiders signed Garrett Gilbert, he's a practice squad. He was a practice squad player for the Patriots last year. He was with the Raiders in the 2014-2015 season. He was also on the practice squad, so he's been with the Raiders in the past. Obviously, I think this is just one of those guys that Josh McDaniels likes. He was with the Patriots last year. It's an okay signing. Personally, I think having a quarterback like Marcus Mariota as your backup, I don't think that's the way to go. I think you shouldn't necessarily have a quarterback like that be your backup unless I don't know. I don't think it makes sense. I think Marcus Mariota has too much value to be a backup quarterback. I think if a team wants Marcus to start, they should go out and bring Marcus in. For us, I think Garrett Gilbert makes sense. That's just my personal opinion. But with that, let's talk about the Derek Carr extension. The first super chat of the day kind of brought that up, right? El Raider kind of talked a little bit about it, asked the question, should the Raiders extend Derek and give him all this money, or should they take the cheaper route and bring all these players in? Earlier I was reading a tweet that came in from Hondo Carpenter, or I think he was on a podcast or something, but he talked a little bit about it, about how important, or how Derek Carr had made his mind up about the fact that if you go get weapons, I will take a cheap contract. If you don't bring weapons, you're going to pay me a lot of money. Essentially, that's what Derek Carr said, according to Hondo Carpenter. And the fact that the Raiders went ahead and got these weapons, the fact the Raiders said, we'll bring in some playmakers for you. Well, now it's like, where's Derek Carr's extension at? Vic Tafur, I think, reported earlier today, and I don't know how true it is. I really don't know with Vic. Sometimes, I feel like maybe he has some inside information, but with the Derek Carr signing, I believe like 2 weeks ago he said something like they were looking into a contract, and then recently he said they're going to extend Max first. Now he's saying they're going to extend Derek Carr, or at least they started contract talks with Derek Carr. I'm not sure how true it is, but if the Raiders are going to extend Derek Carr, I'd be interested in knowing what the Raiders plan to do. Ian Rappaport said the Raiders are interested in extending Carr, but to only a short-term contract, which makes me feel like that wouldn't be the right way to go forward. If you're going to bring in Davante Adams for 5 years, wouldn't it make sense to have Derek Carr here for that entire time? Alternatively, if you guys look at the contract that Davante Adams got, Davante Adams' contract isn't technically 5 years. It's actually really only just 3 years, because after the third year, the Raiders could get out of that contract. There's a way the Raiders can void the rest of the contract, the final 2 years, and we don't incur any cap hits, nothing at all, no dead cap. And what's interesting is if you don't get out of that contract at that point, his last 2 years is $40 million in terms of cap hit, which is freaking insane to think. In literally 4 seasons from now, we'll be paying Davante Adams a cap hit of $40 million. Now, the good thing with that is if we're going to backload those cap hits, that means the front portion, right, the next 3 years isn't that much. And I believe this upcoming year, it's only about $14 million. And don't quote me on that. I believe it's about $14 million. So the Raiders really aren't paying Davante Adams that much money in this first year. And I think that's going to help them extend some of these other guys and potentially even bring in guys like Stephon Gilmore, right? So there's so much that the Raiders could do. And I think when it comes to Derek Carr's extension, I think it makes sense. Let's get it done sooner than later, right? Let's not let it drag. Obviously, the Raiders aren't drafting a quarterback, right? It doesn't make sense. You're not going to draft someone where now you only have the third pick. So if you're going to go all in on Derek Carr, I think you do that now. Or you make it clear that, hey, we're going to just roll forward with the way we have things, and we'll extend Derek at the end of the year. I think that's another option to potentially have, right? I think there's a lot coming, and I think the Raiders are in a really unique position because of it. I see a lot of you guys' comments. Let's get into some of these. Ty Davis said definitely Super Bowl bound, and hopefully we whoop the hell out of KC, pay back from this past season. Absolutely. The Raiders are going to beat the crap out of the Chiefs. I think we're a better team than the Chiefs, man. I truly believe that the Chiefs are not as good as the Raiders. But here's the thing. For the Raiders to beat the Chiefs, Derek Carr has to outperform Patrick Mahomes. And I think it's possible because I think our defense is going to be so much better this year. I love Chris Jones for the Chiefs, but stopping an inside rusher is much easier than stopping an outside rusher. The reason why is with an inside rusher, you can slide your offensive line towards that inside rusher. So you're essentially going to double team that inside rusher. When it comes to an outside rusher, right, like Chandler Jones or Max Crosby, if you put a defensive tackle in the 3 technique, you can't slide that way. It's impossible. So because of that, I think it is harder to block. And my point is I think the Raiders defense is going to be so much better this year that I think Patrick Mahomes is going to struggle, man. I really have a feeling that the Kansas City Chiefs may end up being the worst team in the division this year. Obviously, they'll have a shot because they have a great quarterback and a great coach. But I don't know. Something just kind of tells me. And I think the Raiders are going to beat them. I don't know. Something tells me the Raiders are going to beat them both times. Black Suit said, according to Bears content providers, said he was able to play all over the offensive line. And you're talking about the offensive guard that we signed from them. What is his name? Alex Barr. So the Raiders brought in a guard from the Bears, Alex Bars. What's interesting is Alex Bars played on he came from Notre Dame, and he actually played with Mike McGlinchey and Quentin Nelson on that offensive line. I believe that's who it was. And what's interesting is I think he was the starting right tackle, and I think he came out that same year. I think in 2018. And in the NFL, he's played all over the line. He's played tackle, he's played center. Although center, I think he's only played one game at center, but he's played tackle, center, guard, left guard, right guard. So he's going to be a versatile offensive lineman for the Raiders. And I like that. I like these versatile offensive linemen. Although I don't like versatile tackles. I think with your tackles, you need to get a true backup left tackle and a true backup right tackle. That's my personal opinion after watching Brandon Parker. And we're going to get to Brandon Parker in just a second. Tito says with Adams, Waller, and Renfro and Jones paired with Crosby, Mark said it best. This is a reload, not a rebuild. Absolutely. It's crazy to think that the Raiders are not rebuilding, and we made that very, very clear when we traded Yannick Ngakoue for Rocky Sin, and we brought in Chandler Jones. It became very clear that this is not a rebuild. Another interesting note is the fact that when John Gruden got to the Raiders, remember, John Gruden traded away his best player in Khalil Mack. He traded away his best wide receiver in Amari Cooper. That's not what Josh McDaniels is doing. Josh McDaniels traded for our best wide receiver. He traded for potentially our best defensive end. So Josh McDaniels is taking the opposite approach of John Gruden, and I would say I prefer the approach that we're currently in. Let's go out and get the best players. Let's not try to draft those guys because the draft isn't guaranteed. And, again, I know there's some teams out there that draft very well, right? The Baltimore Ravens do a pretty good job. The Philadelphia Eagles do a pretty good job. Even the New England Patriots do a pretty good job. But the Raiders historically have not done a good job in the draft. And I just feel like for the Raiders, the smart thing is to just get those good football players. Now, obviously, 3rd to 7th round, we still got to hit on some guys, right? We still got to be able to get some good pieces. But Mark Davis is correct. This is a reload, not a rebuild. And we've done a hell of a job reloading right now, and I'm excited for it. Ty Davis said, besides the DC extension, focus on the O-line now. Let's talk about it, man. Let's talk about it because I know a lot of people do not want to, a lot of people don't want this to be the case, but according to a source, Brandon Parker has signed a 1-year contract. Now, I don't know the official number, but it's likely going to be anywhere from $2 to $5 million. If it's closer to 2, it's likely that he's going to be our backup. If it's closer to 5, that may mean Brandon Parker is what the Raiders think as terms of plans at the right tackle position. Now, keep this in mind. Alex Bars, for the most part, is a backup guard, right? So with that, if you bring in a backup guard, that means that Alex Leatherwood is likely going to be your starting guard, which means you need a right tackle, right? Alternatively, if you don't bring in Brandon Parker, maybe that's because Alex Leatherwood's your starting right tackle. Now, from what I've heard, Brandon Parker has been brought back. Now, it hasn't been announced yet, right? So, obviously, you guys won't find this anywhere. But it does look like Josh McDaniels wants Brandon Parker back. Now, from what I've heard, it's going to be as a backup. So the Raiders do still plan to go out and actually get a different right tackle. They don't plan to make Brandon Parker the starter. Now, obviously, just like last year, Brandon Parker wasn't the starter. But because our starter wasn't able to stay at right tackle, right, which is Alex Leatherwood, Parker ended up taking that job over. And that, too, technically he didn't. I believe if Denzel Good was healthy, he would have been the right tackle. That's my personal opinion. But it seems like Brandon Parker has been extended. And as Ty Davis said, we should focus on the offensive line. And I agree. I think the Raiders need to fix the offensive line. And I don't think Brandon Parker is good enough, man. It's unfortunate that the Raiders are going to bring Brandon Parker back, but I truly believe that the Raiders need to, we had a 1st and a 2nd round pick, and I would have been all in to draft a right tackle in the 1st or in the 2nd round, either one, because even in the 2nd round, you can get a really good football player. Technically, in the 3rd round, you can still get a good tackle, but it's just much more difficult to get a starting right tackle. That, too, one that can come in and start right away. That's very difficult to do in the 3rd round. But if the Raiders do extend DC or not, I think they need to focus on the offensive line regardless, right? The last thing I want is for Derek Carr to feel uncomfortable, and that's kind of what I'm feeling that's going to end up happening. Unless the Raiders get a right tackle, we're going to struggle. Now, I will say this. There are some options out there. Obviously, Brandon Parker should be back with the Raiders, right? According to what I've heard, he will be back. But then you look at guys that could potentially still be the option at right tackle. Obviously, the most common sense one should be Alex Leatherwood. At the end of the day, Alex Leatherwood was taken with the 17th overall pick to be a starting right tackle. So that would be an option for the Raiders to take Leatherwood from right guard, move him back to right tackle. Two other options. One that makes a little bit more sense would be a guy who is a pending free agent. That's Jermaine Illuminor. And I don't think he signed anywhere yet. I believe he's still a free agent. Jermaine Illuminor could also be an option at right tackle. So the Raiders have that option because he's actually played right tackle in the past. He's actually played right tackle under both this head coach, Josh McDaniels, and the current offensive line coach. He's been a tackle under this current regime. So that might make more sense. Obviously, the third option would be Denzel Good. I think that's the one that makes the least amount of sense to right tackle. I think he can do it if you needed him to, but I don't think that's who you want to go into the season with. I think you want to get a true right tackle, and I don't think Denzel Good makes sense as a true right tackle. I think Denzel Good is more so of emergency situations you plug him in. But I still think the Raiders have to figure it out. It could be Alex Leatherwood, it could be Jermaine Illuminor, or it can be Denzel Good. And I hope it's not Brandon Parker. Like I think that would be the one that I truly would not want. And I know some people are saying, well, Trent Brown's out there. That's an option. I think the fact that we got Devontae Adams, I think Leo Collins is likely not an option at this point because I think Collins is going to want, $18 million. He wants to be one of the highest paid tackles in the league. Rightfully so. He's a superstar tackle. I think the Raiders at this point are kind of out of that. Rightfully so. I don't know how important it is to get the best tackle in the league. From what I know, the Raiders were also interested in Morgan Moses, who signed with the Baltimore Ravens. So with that, if they were interested in Moses, and keep this in mind, the reason why Moses picked the Ravens over the Raiders was because the Ravens offered him a 3-year contract. 3 years, $15 million. The Raiders offered him a 1-year contract, which was more so, come in and prove it. And I hope that's not what they plan to do with Brandon Parker. I hope Brandon Parker is not on a prove it contract because I would be very disappointed, man. I would not want him to be the option. Hilaro Nunes said we should trade Jacobs for more picks this year. Plus, with Adams and Jones, we have like 6 stars without him. Let's fill roles and let's go Raiders. That's a really good point. I love Josh Jacobs, and the thing is I wouldn't want to keep Josh on this roster because I think this quarterback, this quarterback with this coach, I think is going to be lights out. I truly believe Derek Carr is going to be lights out because I truly believe that Josh McDaniels is a better coach than Greg Olsen is. Right? I think he's a much better coach. And with that being said, now you have Devontae Adams, right? Like Devontae Adams is the best player Derek Carr has ever played with in his entire career, and it's not close, right? Like Darren Waller is a really good football player, but he doesn't have the playmaking abilities that Devontae Adams has. There will be times where Derek throws Adams the ball for 7 yards. Adams breaks a tackle and picks up 30. We're going to see that, and that's something we haven't really seen, right? And I don't know if we should trade Josh because I almost feel like the coach will put him in position to succeed. And at the same time, I think when it comes to true running backs, I think Josh is the best that we have right now. Now, I will say this. If Josh Jacobs expects $10 million after this upcoming year, right, if he expects that extension of $10 million, I think you let him walk. And I think you bring in a rookie that you can have for the next 4 years. And maybe in the third round you trade for a rookie, or maybe you trade up in the draft, right? Maybe you trade up into the second round, and maybe you take a running back, and it's a possibility that that's something the Raiders may be able to do. Obviously, we'll see. It's going to be very interesting. Trinidad says the cap will be different after New Sunday tick contract. I'm not 100% sure what you're saying after New Sunday. Yeah, it's going to be interesting, man. I plan to take a look at the contracts. The cap space, I think, is going to be very interesting with the Raiders. We're in a very unique position because even next year, although we're not going to have $160 million next year, now at this point, after after trading for and then giving Devontae Adams a new contract, as well as Chandler Jones has a 3-year contract, we're still going to have over $115 million next year. So it's going to be very, very, very interesting what the Raiders do when the cap space kind of comes around. I see a lot of your guys' questions. Bill Gates said, "Just Senji, if Justin Ross is on the board in round 3, do we shoot best wide receiver corner in the league?" I don't know, man. I don't really know how I feel about Justin Ross. I like him, but I just don't know if I would take him in the 3rd round. Not saying that he's not a good player. I think he's a good player, but I think the Raiders need to be very hesitant. I would hesitate with taking a wide receiver at this point because I think you already have a 3rd round investment in Bryan Edwards. You have a 1st and a 2nd round investment in Devontae Adams. You have Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow. You already have 4 good wide receivers, right? And I know Bryan Edwards hasn't really proven it, but I think Bryan Edwards should be able to prove it this year. So I think for the Raiders, what you have to do is not continuing to invest in the wide receiving position. In fact, I would maybe invest in a left guard. The Chiefs got a good left guard, or I believe it's a right guard, late, I think in the 6th or 7th round last year. Other teams have gotten good guards late in the draft, 3rd, 4th, 5th round. And even Gabe Jackson, I believe, was a 3rd round pick, right? Or was he a 2nd? I think he was a 3rd round pick. So you can get really good guards later on in the draft. And I would say that if there's a good left guard, maybe the Raiders make that move for a good left guard. John Simpson was taken. This would be his 3rd year. I don't have the confidence in John Simpson. But if Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler feels like they could get the best out of John Simpson, then maybe you roll forward with him. But even then, right tackle is very important. I think right tackle should be most likely someone you pick up via free agency. Maybe you trade for someone, right? I'm sure there's guys out there. One that comes to mind is Mike McGlinchey of the San Francisco 49ers. I know he really hasn't done that well for them. They may be looking to move on from him. Maybe that's someone you potentially bring in, right? And he may actually even be a free agent. I think this is going to be his 5th year. I believe this would be his 5th year, or maybe it's his 4th year. But there's a lot of people out there. Key Disley says Leatherwood is a beast. You will all eat your words. I mean, I truly hope that is exactly what happens. I haven't given up on Alex Leatherwood. But I know what I saw from him last year, and it was not very impressive. And that's just my personal opinion. He was not impressive last year. Also, when you kind of watch Alex Leatherwood, the way he blocks, he doesn't punch, right? He catches, if that makes sense. And catching is not a trait that tackles have. That's a trait that guards have. And unless he fixes that, which he can absolutely fix it, but he has to improve. And I do hope that he could be the Raiders' right tackle because with the investment that we have in him, he should be the Raiders' tackle. Like there's no reason why he should not be the Raiders' tackle, right? Michael Coyle said, "Do you think we trade back in the 2nd round?" I think it's a possibility. I think it's definitely a possibility that we trade into the 2nd round. We'll find out, man. There's so much the Raiders can do. When the Devontae Adams trade happened, the first thing that was reported was that it was a player that we gave up, and I was hoping it wasn't Darren Waller. Then it was reported we gave up 2 picks. I think it was a 1st and a 2nd round. And I was hoping that one of those picks was next year because we still need draft picks. But it ended up not being next year. So it ended up being both from this year. And I felt like that kind of sucked that it wasn't a pick, at least from next year. But now I think it may make sense for the Raiders to move up and to trade up in the 2nd round. We need some help, man. And more so than just help, we need guys on cheap contracts, right? Because the NFL is a hard cap, it's a salary cap driven league, and Derek Carr is going to get paid, which means it's gonna be that much harder to bring back the Jonathan Abram and Josh Jacobs and Trayvon Mullen, the Hunter Renfrows and Darren Waller. It's gonna get harder and harder to keep these guys. The Kansas City Chiefs don't have much invested on their defensive side. Outside of Chris Jones, I really don't know who else makes a ton of money for the Kansas City Chiefs. With the Raiders, that's not the case. We have Max Crosby and Chandler Jones at this point on getting a lot of money. And then we have guys that are up for contracts. Denzel Perryman will even be up for a contract after this year if the Raiders want to keep him. But, you look at Trayvon Mullen, Jonathan Abram. You look at Below Nichols, who signed a contract with, I think, $5.5 million. So you're paying a lot of players on that defense, and there's guys that are going to want contracts. So we have to figure out who we're going to replace these guys with once Devontae Adams cap kicks in, right? I think he's going to get $30 million in a year, in a half, or after this year, he's going to get $30 million. So there's a lot that the Raiders have to really figure out in terms of cap. One of the things you can do, obviously, is trade up into the second round this year. Obviously, we'll see what happens. Some people talk about Trent Brown at right tackle. I think that could be a pretty solid option. The only issue I'd have with Trent Brown is how many games are we going to get out of him? Are we going to get 4 games or are we going to get 16? Because if we're only going to get 4, it's not worth it because we're going to be in the same predicament where Brandon Parker now has to come in and start, and we're in a shitty situation again. Again, we'll find out, man. It's going to be very interesting. It's coming up. It's coming up soon, and I'm excited, man. Rec C said we need to address linebacker. You know what's the craziest part is I really wanted the Raiders to get a linebacker with the 22nd overall pick. And I've been saying this since, I think, 2018. I was all in for Roquan Smith. I said the Raiders have to get Roquan Smith. And I was like, I'm not going to get Tremaine Edmonds because I think he was the other linebacker that came out that year. And I think Rashaan Evans was also another linebacker that came out this year. And Rashaan Evans could be a player that the Raiders pick up. I believe he's a free agent right now. But Roquan Smith, I really, really wanted him in 2018, and we didn't get him. And then in 2019, who was the guy coming out in 2019? I can't remember who it was in 2019, but I really wanted that guy. And then in 2020, or in 2019, it was Devin White and Devin Bush. And I really wanted Devin White. Ended up not getting him. Then I really wanted Kenneth Murray. We ended up not getting him. I wanted Patrick Queen as well in that draft. We ended up not getting him. The Raiders never draft linebackers. I don't know what it is, but I think we're okay with Denzel Perryman and Divine Diablo right now. But I will say this. I think Denzel Perryman needs to be replaced sooner than later. We need linebackers that can cover. And I just don't have the faith that Denzel Perryman can cover. I just don't have the faith in him. If Denzel Perryman's playing a cover 3 and he's playing those mid hooks, that's one thing. But if he has to drop in and cover a running back running a wheel route or an angle route, he's going to get smoked. And we can't have that. And I think the Raiders need to address the linebacker position. I couldn't agree more with you, Rexy. So thank you for the comment. Larry Keys, big shout out to you. So love your content, big bro. Much, much appreciated, man. I really, really do appreciate that. Abel Barrow said Raiders going 4 broke for Super Bowl host city, all in. I hope so. I think, is it this upcoming year that the Raiders host the Super Bowl? I think it is, or maybe it's the year after. But the Raiders got to be all in, man. We got to win a Super Bowl, man. We got to win. I think it is this upcoming year, which would be then the 3rd year that the home team wins the Super Bowl, which is crazy, right? Because the Bucs won when it was hosted in Tampa. The Rams won when it was hosted in LA. And I think this is the year it's hosted in Vegas. So maybe that's the thing, right? Shoot the man said Rolando McClain. That, I'm surprised McClain never worked out. And I almost feel like if the coaching staff was different, he could have worked out because I feel like he had a lot of game. Obviously, he was not worth the first round pick. But I remember some of those big hits that McClain would land on players, man, and he was a big dude. Obviously, there are some players who have issues, mentally with processing the game and really putting the effort into it. And McClain, similar to Jamarcus Russell, just didn't care enough, right, about football. They didn't have the passion and the love. And one of the first things I look for when I want to have a player be with the Raiders for the long run is the passion. Does the player have passion? And you can find out passion from a player just watching their interviews. And I'm not saying watch like their draft interview where it's like they're on ESPN. Go watch all of their pressers from their time in college. The random presser after a game, the random presser that some random news person did. And you'll find out real quick the type of passion a player has. If he comes off as he doesn't care, chances are he doesn't care. If a guy wants to be great, and I'll give you guys an example, and I'll use Max Crosby as an example. I was watching the interview I did with Max Crosby about a year back. I believe it was in March of 2021. And I remember doing the presser with him, the interview with him. And I remember thinking to myself, this guy has so much passion. This guy loves the game of football. This guy truly wants to be great. And it's really paid off. And think about it. Like, us Raider fans knew going into last year that Max Crosby is a really good football player. But the national media did not know. The national, all the other fan bases out there did not know that Max Crosby is this guy that wants to be a great player and he has all this talent. He really just came to the scene after this last season ended. And those are the types of people that I want for the Raiders. Those are the type of passionate players that I want for the Raiders. Ronaldo McClain was a terrible pick, man. Terrible pick. Philip Thomas to trade for Micah Parsons. That would never happen, man. There is no way the Dallas Cowboys are going to trade Micah Parsons. And that too, if we wanted Micah Parsons, that's like 3 first-round picks. Maybe not 3, but that's multiple first-round picks, or at least 1 first and a like super high second, a third, a fourth. Like Micah Parsons, and I'm saying this right now, you guys, hot take, whatever you guys want to say. Micah Parsons is one of the best defensive players in the entire league. He's likely a top 5 best defensive player already. Think about it. We saw coming out of the draft, I think 2 years ago, it was Isaiah Simmons. And people said this guy's a safety, he's a linebacker, you put him at defensive end, put him in the slot, he can do everything. And technically he can, right? But he just hasn't really shown us in the NFL. Then comes along Micah Parsons, and we said this guy could play in the slot. This guy could play stacked as a linebacker, or you can put him as a defensive end. And the Cowboys had him as a linebacker, and he dominated as a linebacker. Then they put him as a defensive end, and he dominated as a defensive end. Micah Parsons is a special player, man, and I truly believe he's one of the best players in the entire league. And the thing is he probably has his most value as a defensive end because he'll whoop anyone as a defensive end. I would love to trade for Micah Parsons, man. The Raiders should have traded up to get him in last year's draft. Ty Davis, thank you for confirming. So we host the Super Bowl in 2024. So we're a couple years away from that. A big shout out to all of you guys, man. I really appreciate it. Jay Castro said trade Perryman to the Colts, sign a scheme fit linebacker. I think that makes the most sense. A lot of you guys are saying Bobby Wagner. I think Bobby Wagner, Dante Hightower, even Rashawn Evans are better options for the Raiders than Denzel Perryman, because I think those guys fit the scheme better and they're better in pass coverage. Even a guy like Miles Jack, although I'm not 100% sure if Miles Jack's, I think he may have signed somewhere. But I feel like those guys, sorry about that, the camera keeps twitching here, but I feel like those guys are better scheme fits. And I think the Raiders would be wise to trade Perryman, but I don't think the Colts want Denzel Perryman. I know, Gus Bradley would probably love to have his linebacker back. And maybe as the season kind of approaches, Josh McDaniels kind of realizes that Denzel Perryman's really not a good fit for the Raiders, because he'll likely realize that this guy was one scheme fit specific and he's not that good in coverage. Although he's still fairly young and he's still really good against the run, I think the Raiders need to figure out what they're going to do. One of the things I never really understand is we struggled this past year against the run. Years before that, we struggled in multiple aspects. We had bottom 5 defenses year in, year out, year in, year out. But people always want us to continue to re-sign some of these players, right? I love Jonathan Abram, but if we suck on defense with Jonathan Abram for 3 years, why bring him in for year 4 or year 5? Right? If we have Trayvon Mullen at corner and we suck on the defense side of the ball, we can't stop anybody at wide receiver, why continue to bring that guy in? And I'm not saying those 2 guys specifically. I'm just making an example. If Denzel Perryman is great against the run, that's one thing. But if we struggle and we can't cover Travis Kelce, it may be time to move on from Denzel Perryman, right? And obviously we'll see now that we're not running that cover 3 scheme, kind of how Perryman fits. Don't be surprised if during the training camp, off-season training camp, if the Raiders do end up trading Denzel Perryman. Remember, we only brought him in, I think, after the season had already started or right before the season kind of started, right? We all thought it was going to be Nicholas Morrow that was going to go in and be that linebacker for the Raiders. Thank you for the super chat. I really appreciate it. Josh, thank you for confirming as well. 2024 is when the Raiders play in the Super Bowl. Fingers crossed. I hope we win a Super Bowl before that, man. It would be awesome if the Raiders are somehow able to win the Super Bowl for that. I'd say every 15 to 20 years, a coach comes into the league that ends up being the next great coach, right? Most recently, Sean McVay, who's a great coach. Andy Reid, Bill Belichick have been great coaches. And I truly believe that, or not believe, but I truly hope Josh McDaniels ends up being that next coach, the next superstar coach. Because again, the Raiders got to figure it out. If you can, I would argue that having a great coach one of the league's best coaches is more important than having the best quarterback. Because if you have a great coach, chances are the coach will he'll put a great system in place. He'll make it work. He'll figure out the quarterback situation. Kind of how Sean McVay did, right? Sean McVay got Jared Goff to take him to a Super Bowl. Jared Goff literally just was so terrible for the Lions. They now have the second overall pick, right? That's the difference between what Jared Goff did with Sean McVay versus what he did, this past year. Again, it's going to be very, very interesting, and I'm excited to kind of see what the Raiders can do. And I truly hope Josh McDaniels is the guy for the Raiders. Crujo, I apologize if I say that wrong, just became a member to the channel. Big, big, big shout out to you, man. I really, really, really appreciate that. Memberships help, man. It really does help. I don't want to continue talking about how much it helps, so I'll just say this really quickly. I do film videos, and sometimes I will decide not to do film breakdowns because sometimes it could take 3, 4, 5 hours to do. And most of the time you don't get any compensation out of it. But when you have members, you know that, hey, this month I may make $150 or $200 for memberships. And then you may want to do those film breakdowns, because even though you're losing out, for those members that do or that are subscribed, you want to give something back to them. So big shout out to you for joining. And I have a very special film breakdown coming up, man. A couple of them. Very, very special film breakdown. So be on the lookout for that. 2024 is Vegas Super Bowl. Do you think we fix the offensive line and linebackers using draft? I don't think the Raiders are going to draft a linebacker that's going to help us in the third or later rounds. Maybe next year we can, but I don't think that's going to happen soon, because I think at the current moment, the Raiders linebacker issues, it's not so much that our current linebackers aren't good players. Like they're good players, right? But we just don't have that difference maker at linebacker. We don't have that guy that can come in and intercept the pass, a guy that could bait a quarterback and take it the distance. We don't have a guy that can punch the ball out. You look at the impact that Darius Leonard has had for the Colts. You look at the impact that Fred Warner has had for the San Francisco 49ers. The impact that Bobby Wagner has had in the past for the Seattle Seahawks. These guys literally win games. And, winning games doesn't have to come from the linebacker position, but it would be nice for the Raiders to have that type of player. Obviously, Max Crosby can come in and close games out, and he did a lot last year. Maybe not close them out, but he helped close them out, right? Maybe not so with the sack, fumble, or anything like that, but pressure and baiting a quarterback to throw the ball away on third down or punt, whatever. But I think offensive line is something you can fix through the draft. I think offensive line you can find a really good guard in the third, fourth, fifth round. You can even find good tackles later on in the draft. The Chargers last year not only took Rashawn Slater in the first round, but they took another guy, I think in the 7th round, who I think is going to be their starting right tackle this year. I can't think of his name on the top of my head. I think he comes from Nebraska or Wisconsin. But there's another tackle that the Chargers took this past year, and I think he's going to end up starting because they just released their right tackle. So I think they're going to have 2 tackles start that they took in the draft last year. Obviously, one was a first-round pick, but the other was a 6th or a 7th-round pick. The Raiders could go and get someone like that can come in and have an impact. Orlando Brown Jr. was a 3rd-round pick, and I think he got drafted either a couple picks before Brandon Parker or a couple picks after Brandon Parker. So it's not impossible at all to get a guy in the draft, and I think the Raiders need to hit on that. NorCal Raider Jesse, who is a member, is welcoming Crujo, who is now a paid member. Welcome to the family. I'm going to have some new emojis, man. There's these special emojis that members get. I'm going to have a couple special emojis coming for you guys. We'll have some Devontae Adams emojis because I think technically there's still a Rodney Hudson one, and he's long gone. So I'm going to have some of those coming in. Jay Castro said that I missed his super chat. Let me see if I can see it. And I apologize if I missed any super chat. I see a couple super chats from up here. Okay, I see it. Let me go ahead and get into this one first, and then we'll go back into the other one. Jay Castro said, Sanjit Demus, give us a bold prediction on free agent front. I think the Raiders are going to bring in Stephon Gilmore, man. I truly believe it is coming. I truly believe the Raiders understand what it's going to take to beat Russell Wilson, Justin Herbert, and Patrick Mahomes. And part of that is going to be to have a great secondary. And you don't go out and get Anthony Averett and Brock Ya-Sin unless you knew for a fact that this is the way to win. You can have great pass rush. But here's the thing with pass rush. If you bring four guys, which is what the Raiders will do probably 70% of the time, if you bring four guys, what's going to end up happening is you can always have a guy chip on one side and have the offensive line slide to the other side. So basically, you're almost double teaming both defensive ends. Or if you're playing the Chargers, Rashawn Slater is going to hold his own against whoever lines up across from him. And when you play those type of teams, and the Chiefs have Orlando Brown. I don't even know who the Broncos have, but those tackles can hold their own. So what's going to happen is when you're going to play those type of guys, we got to get after the quarterback. And being able to get after the quarterback, you need to be able to cover on the secondary. You have to be able to cover on the back end. So I think guys like Stephon Gilmore are invaluable for the Raiders. Don't be surprised if that announcement comes soon. We have a bunch of different reports. We have some people saying the Raiders are not interested. Some people saying the Raiders aren't interested. Some people are saying the Raiders have already offered him a contract, and it's up to him if he wants to be a Raider. We'll obviously find out what it actually is. I believe Jermaine Illuminor and Brandon Parker are both going to be back with the Raiders. I don't know what it is. I believe Brandon Parker is already signed, and I feel like Illuminor will end up getting a contract with the Raiders as well because we need tackles. And, there are good tackles out there, don't get me wrong, but how many tackles are as good as Illuminor or as good as Parker? I shouldn't even use the word good and Parker together, but it's going to be very interesting, man. Very, 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 very interesting. There was another super chat. I almost missed it. Tito, big shout out to you. You said, despite giving up a first and a second pick, don't forget key players on our team like Crosby and Renfro came from the later rounds. We can still improve in this year's draft. And that's a great point, right? And I should not overlook that. And it's a really good point because we did still get some very good players in the later rounds, right? You get Max Crosby and Hunter Renfro. And even more so than that, you get Nate Hobbs. I think Nate Hobbs was a 5th round pick. So we have hit on some late round picks. The interesting thing in this upcoming draft will be to say, if the Raiders are going to hit on some of these late round guys, what position do we need to hit on? Like, do we need to make sure we hit on that right tackle or that left guard? Like, which position are the Raiders going to hit on? And I think it's absolutely possible. I will also say this. I feel like Mike Mayock just had something special with late round guys. I don't know what it is because late round picks don't always work out. Although the New England Patriots have had a lot of success in the late rounds, I think Chandler Jones was a New England Patriot. I believe the Patriots initially drafted Chandler Jones, and I think they drafted him in the 2nd or 3rd round. I don't think he was a 1st round pick, and don't quote me on any of that. It maybe wasn't even the Patriots, but I believe it was the New England Patriots. Either way, it's going to be very interesting. I think the Raiders are going to hit on some players. We'll find out. We'll find out what ends up happening. I see a lot of your guys' questions and comments regarding the Raiders and kind of how they can improve going into this year. One of the things to kind of keep as the season comes along is health of certain players. Injuries happen every year, right? Last year, Josh Jacobs, I think, missed a couple games. Darren Waller missed a couple games. Our right tackle was terrible, and then Denzel Good out for the year. Rich Incognito out for the year. Trayvon Mullen was pretty much out for the entire year last year. Injuries are going to happen, and the Raiders really have to not only have our starters, because having your starters is one thing, but you have to have key backups. And what that means is if you have a right tackle out, you have to have a tackle backup that can play both right and left, right? A guy that's good enough to come in at right tackle, but then even play left tackle if needed. If Jonathan Abram gets hurt, you need to have a good backup to come in and do what Abram does. If Nate Hobbs gets hurt, you have to have a good backup. And the thing we can't have, especially, is Devontae Adams can't get hurt, right? Like, there's no backup for Devontae Adams. You already gave up a 1st and a 2nd round pick. Devontae Adams is going to be key, man, this year for the Raiders. If the Raiders make the playoff and want to compete for a Super Bowl, Devontae Adams has to have success, and he has to be healthy for the Raiders. Tito, I appreciate the $10 super chat. Rex, he said, do you think we will use Abram as a linebacker and draft, sign, cover, safety? I don't think so. I don't think Jonathan Abram is big enough to play linebacker. I never really understood this. Some people believe that guys like Jonathan Abram could just convert to a safety, and playing safety is similar to playing linebacker. And that's not the case. Jonathan Abram will not be able to convert to a linebacker and be a full-time linebacker. It's just not possible. He's too small. He may be able to do it for a third of the game, but the second he has to start taking on guards that are coming full speed at him, 330-pound guards, Jonathan Abram cannot hit a guard, try to rip or go through a guard. It's just not possible. He's too small. Every guard in the league has 100 pounds on Jonathan Abram. It's just not possible. Linebackers struggle with guards. So as a safety, it's not something that's possible, in my opinion. I think Jonathan Abram's best fit is going to be as a safety. Keep this in mind. We're not going to be playing Gus Bradley's cover 3 scheme. Jonathan Abram will not be using the box the way he was last year. This year, he's going to be relied upon to do what he did in his first and second year, and that's to play that split safety, and that is to cover a half of the field on certain plays, come up and guard a tight end or blitz or whatever it may be, right? Jonathan Abrams can be expected to do that. And I would say this, Jonathan Abram has this year to really prove it, because if he doesn't prove it, he won't be with the Raiders going forward. I do think Jonathan Abrams is a really good football player. I think he's a smart, high IQ. He gets the game of football at a really deep level, but he has to come together and he has to stay healthy. We can't have him continuing to get hurt. He's gotten hurt every single year, and we just can't have that. Thank you for the super chat. Thank you to Dylan, who just became a member of the channel. Big shout out to you. As you became a member, one thing I'm going to recommend to you is to go back and check out the members only content. I've done a couple of videos, and I'm going to be doing a lot more over the next couple of months. Getting a whole new schedule, getting some things figured out with my job. I'll be leaving work soon. And at that point, man, hopefully 3 or 4 times a week, I'll be putting members only content out there. Big shout out to you. Big shout out to Douglas as well, who just became a member. I appreciate it, man. I really do appreciate it. It's the most members I've gained in a long time. So big shout out to you. Thank you, guys. Julian left another super chat saying, do you think we have to replace Abram for the coming year? And that's a different question than what that last question was. I don't think we need to replace Jonathan Abram. And if you guys could just hit that thumbs up button for me, I would really appreciate it. There's over 600 of you guys here, which is crazy for a Saturday night to have 600 people here, because I know there's so many better things than to come watch me talk Raiders. But do I think the Raiders need to replace Jonathan Abram this year? If you guys asked me this question before we got Devontae Adams, before we spent all this money on Chandler Jones, I would have said that possibly yes. There's a chance that maybe not replace him, but to have a third safety on this roster where you're paying him $5 or $6 million and let him compete. Let him compete with Jonathan Abram. And I would have only said that because Jonathan Abram can't stay healthy. The last 5 or 6 games of last season, Jonathan Abram missed those games. His rookie year, he missed all but the first game of the season, and he only played half that game. Second year, he missed a couple of games. He's now going into year 4 where he's missed half of his career at this point, or close to half his career. We can't have him playing half the time, because if he wants to play half the time, then he better give us half his salary back, because we're not paying him we're still paying him his entire salary. So with that being said, we really need to figure out that if Jonathan Abram is going to be a Raider, is he going to be healthy? And at the same time, that's another reason why I hesitate to put him into the box and play as a linebacker, because the more times he takes on those guards, the more times he hits those guards, the higher their chances that he's going to end up getting hurt. And we can't have that. We need guys to be healthy. Now, Patrick Graham does use 3 safeties, and Dalen Levet is a guy that I think the Raiders have decided to bring back. They had tendered him with the first right to refuse, which basically means that if another team offered him a contract, the Raiders can deny it as long as they match the contract and basically bring him back. No one offered him a contract, and I believe he's back with the Raiders, which I like. I like Levet. He's, I think, 4th or 5th year in the league. He's super young still, and I think he's a good football player, right? I think Levet's going to play a lot this year. Him, Abram, as well as Merrick, and I'm excited for Merrick, man, in this system. I love Merrick coming out of the draft. I'm very excited to really see what he can do. MRA Fetty said, just wanted to say thanks for the content. I really appreciate that, man. Raider Nation, baby. I really appreciate that. Raider Nation, man, it's honestly the best fan base in the entire world. Like there's nothing else like it, man. Raiders, it's truly a family, and I feel blessed to cover the Raiders. When I got into making content years back, I didn't realize that this is what it would be to make content for the Raiders, because I watch other content creators for other teams, right? Bills and the Patriots and all these other teams. I watch all these content creators, and those guys, when they go live, get 30, 40, 50 people. We're 600 people deep, and that's because it's the nation, man. That's just what it is, right? We're very passionate. So thank you. I really appreciate the super chat. Omar said, Sanjit, giving up more than a first was too much. We are not the Rams. No D tackle, right tackle, etc. I'm not gonna lie to you guys, man. You guys tell me, did we give up too much for Devontae Adams? Did the Raiders overpay for Devontae Adams? Because what Omar just said is a really good point. We are not the Rams, right? We don't have a great defensive tackle, a great cornerback. We don't even have a right tackle, right? And that is a good point. But I will say this: we do have two good defensive ends. We do have a good quarterback, and we do have a good tight end. Although we aren't the Rams, we still have our own pieces. And I know we definitely gave up a lot. A first and a second is a lot to give up, right? But the hope is that Devontae Adams, who is he's the number one wide receiver in the league, right? And now I know some people would say it's likely not Devontae Adams, right? Maybe it's Jamar Chase, maybe it's Tyreek Hill, and you can make those arguments for sure that it could be one of those guys as well. But the Raiders are still really good, and we can still win a Super Bowl with the current pieces that we have. I truly believe Chandler Jones and Devontae Adams change this entire team and changes the entire narrative for the Raiders. And at the end of the day, I want to see what Derek Carr can do with having these type of players, having these superstar type of players. Crujo says we were supposed to give up 2 first, right? Which is a good point, right? Apparently, they wanted 2 first-round picks. The Green Bay Packers wanted 2 first-round picks, and the Raiders only gave them a 1 first-round pick and then a second. I'm still upset that they went ahead and franchise tagged Adams, because had they just let Adams walk, the Raiders would have had him for free. But because of the fact that they franchised him, they knew they were not going to let him walk. Rightfully so, made a ton of sense. Very, very interesting. Thank you for the comment. We got another member as well, Campo Snakefist. Big shout out to you. Same message. Check out all the past videos. Raider Glenn said, now that we have an outstanding quarterback, wide receiver, tight end, and running backs, how worried are you about our weak offense line? I will say this. If there is one position that it's easiest to figure out, offensive line is that position, right? Because you don't need to have one really good player. You can have 5 average players that work well together. And with that, if you're able to do that, you're able to have a great offensive line. And I think the Raiders will be able to do that. I do think that you have to have a good right tackle. And I think that is the one position that does concern me. I think from right guard to left tackle, I think we're perfectly fine. Now, I've seen Alex Leatherwood working out, man, and he looks different. Like his face looks skinnier and bigger, his shoulders, his arms, he looks stronger, he looks tougher. And that's all great and everything, right? But I will say this, I need him to work on some technique things. I need for him to, yes, get stronger. And I hope that Alex Leatherwood can move back to that right tackle position and excel and be good and be the guy that the Raiders need him to be. There's a chance he can be, and obviously we'll find out. Thank you for the super chat. I really appreciate that. Campbell said, love your content. There is only one nation. Big shout out to you for not only becoming a member, but also leaving the super chat. There is only one nation, man. It really is like that. There really is only one nation. Ryan Decker said, time to let Richie go. Absolutely. Richie Incognito cannot be brought back. I don't care what they say. He cannot be brought back. Another thing that just kind of hit, if you guys didn't know, Chandler Jones just announced it that he is officially number 55. I know there's some of you guys out there that are going to order those jerseys from China, man. So now you guys know he's officially number 55. But I appreciate the super chat. Ryan, Richard Incognito has to go. John Simpson is our left guard. unless you can upgrade him. There's no way that the left guard is going to be Rich Incognito. One, it costs us too much money, and he just has not been healthy, and we can't do that, man. We absolutely cannot do that. There's a lot of you guys watching, and I appreciate it, man. We're well over the time that I want it to be live, but I do want to say this. You know, I plan to go live much more often. I plan to actually do a legit show, right? This is just me talking and just, going on, blabbing nonsense, stuff like that. But I do plan to have a legit show for you guys where I'll have legit topics, and we'll get into it, and I'll be bringing on guests, and we'll kind of go from there. But if you guys could hit that thumbs up button, I would really appreciate it. And I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your weekend, man. I'm gonna have some film breakdowns coming out for you guys, so subscribe so you guys can see those videos as well. And I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your Saturday, man. Thumbs up, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time with another video.